Thank you, Bruce. Pleasure to be here. On February 10 of 15 years ago, two white males in their 50s walked into the Seafirst Bank in Lakewood a half an hour after the doors had been locked. They pulled this gun on the three female employees that were still there and said, "We're with the FBI. We're here to take your money." A half hour later, they walked out of that bank with 355 pounds of cash, totaling just under $4.5 million. This is the biggest bank robbery in U.S. history, and those two guys are the best bank robbers in U.S. history. And it happened right here in Lakewood. Now, I want everybody to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise I will not rob a bank. Even though Mr. Gunn is going to tell me the best way to do it. These were the trench coat robbers. They had hit 28 banks in a period of 15 years. About every 6 months they robbed a bank. They were used to getting $200,000. This was the first time they ever hit in the state of Washington. They hit in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota and New York and Nevada and Utah and Oregon. First time they ever hit here, and they got away clean that night. And 30 agents responded to the bank in Lakewood, did every logical investigation, checked every hotel between here and SeaTac, all the rental car agencies. Of course, we reviewed film that was on, that the bank cameras were not activated, and they knew ahead of time they wouldn't be. But we reviewed the film on the ATM machine and so forth. Not a lead, nothing. These guys got away clean. Well, what we have is the description from the three female tellers that had been flex cuffed to the furniture while the robbers broke in and busted and got all that money. That bank was not just a regular bank. Half of the building was a vault where big amounts of money were counted through machines and strapped every day. At the end of the day, the vault didn't have a vault. So they wheeled these carts across the back of the teller stations and put it in the vault in the bank area. And when those guys walked in, they knew that that vault was still open. They didn't know how much money was there because they left about $4 million when they walked out with $4.5 million. They were heard to say, "The bags are full, we gotta go." Okay, so unsolved bank robbery. I was testifying on a matter in Salt Lake City and had just finished. I got a call, "Hey, come back, and we're putting you in charge of this case." It was what the FBI called trench rob, because these were the trench coat robbers. They dressed in business casual. In our bank, they wore caps and sunglasses, but no further disguise. And we put out this poster with drawings based on the three witnesses, what they looked like. But two white males in their 50s, who I will call tall guy and short guy, okay? 6 foot, 5'8" or so. My supervisor here in Tacoma, I was working FBI Tacoma, and the supervisor, Kevin Brock, wisely called a case conference. He called in agents from all the other offices that had had robberies, those 27 other bank robbers. And we went over case by case what had been developed during those cases. There was never a photograph of one of these guys, except one. In a robbery in Henderson, Nevada, an alarm had been set off. Police had responded. These guys had pulled out a semi-automatic rifle, assault weapon, taken a teller hostage, and made a getaway on a predetermined plan. There was a blockade set up by one police officer at the point, and they blasted away in his direction and got away. Switched the car, left the teller. But while they were being chased by the police, a reporter was coming the other way in her car, put her camera out, and snapped a picture of the tall guy driving who had taken his mask off. And he looked like this. It wasn't a great picture. So That's what we had. But we did have that case conference. And one thing we learned, unfortunately, was that the Milwaukee office, where there'd been 4 robberies in Wisconsin, had 8 years earlier convicted 2 guys for these bank robberies that they had. They were 2 armored car robbers who had been caught by the police robbing an armored car in Boston. They were brought from Boston to Milwaukee, stood in a lineup, and were identified by voice by one teller saying, "Oh, I know that voice anywhere." And with that, and not much more, and no evidence that I ever heard of that they'd ever been in Wisconsin or ever robbed a bank. Remember, they were armored car robberies. Those guys were convicted and sent to federal prison. Their names were Bulldog and Larkin. Okay, that's another bit of story that we'll talk about a little later. So, 30 agents responded. A bunch of us worked for many days on this, and then it got down to 1 agent and no leads. And we did learn a few other things about their MO. We recognized that they walked into banks after they were closed or before they opened, and took over the bank. And they were very good at it, and they were very businesslike. What we got 9 months later was what we call a lucky break. 10 months later, I think, to the day. A fellow was driving his rental car across Nebraska, got stopped in a speed trap in Lincoln, Nebraska. The highway patrolman said, "Where is this your car?" "No, it's a rental car out in Las Vegas." "What were you doing in Las Vegas?" "My niece doesn't like to fly, so I went there and drove her to Salt Lake." Sounded a little fishy, and that's a drug route across Nebraska. So he said, "Do you have any drugs in the car?" "No." "Any large amounts of money?" "No." "Mind if I search?" And the guy said, "No, I don't want you to search." So with that, the officer called a drug dog who came, jumped in the back seat, sniffed on a bag there. They opened that bag and found no drugs, but a bunch of key-making materials. And the driver said, "I'm a locksmith." And the cop said, "I got myself a burglar here." So with that, they popped the trunk, found 2 trunks in the trunk, foot lockers, that had 4 guns, a bunch of masks, disguise material, police walkie-talkies, police scanners, and $1.8 million in cash. This is what we call in the law enforcement business a lucky break. Okay. So Joe Dushak, an agent in Las Vegas who had attended the case conference, called me, said, "Hey, they just stopped a guy named Don Wilson in Nebraska with all this stuff in his car." I sent 2 gals from the bank vault out to Nebraska. I said, "When you guys are counting money and putting straps on it, do you initial and sometimes maybe write on the money?" She said, "Yes, but more than that, we stamp it with our own stamp, bright purple ink, with our number on it." I said, "Go out there and see, look at that money." These gals went out to Nebraska and found, yes, bright purple ink on some of the bills that clearly identified it as money from their bank here, even dated. So that was a lucky break. Meanwhile, the tall guy, whose name was Billy Kirkpatrick, he was going by Don Wilson, but he'd been arrested in Nebraska before under the name Billy Kirkpatrick, so they matched his fingerprints. Anyway, he called his girlfriend, Myra Penny, up in Wisconsin, or up in Minneapolis, where they were living, and said, "Hey, I got bail. I need $100,000 bail money." So she comes on down, shows up with $115,000 in cash, and they throw her in jail for aiding and abetting. All they had him on really was gun possession when he shouldn't have been in possession of guns. But anyway, we had him in jail, and we identified the money as from our bank, and things started to shape up. I will just mention at this point that the search of that vehicle, as good as it was thrown out of federal court. Why? Because the officer could not give a good enough reason His hunch was not a good enough reason to hold that guy for 21 minutes while the drug dog came. Everything that happened after the drug dog got there was fine. But to hold him for 21 minutes, got all that evidence thrown out, cannot be used against him because we violated his rights by holding him for 21 minutes. Okay, Myra Penny, the girlfriend, got thrown in jail. She soon figured out the game is over. She had helped him, her boyfriend, stash money in safe deposit boxes and so forth when he would go away on work. We asked her, who's his partner? And she said, I don't know, except his name is Ray, and he's from Kansas City. Ray from Kansas City. Both these guys had been buddies in Kansas City. Before they were the best bank robbers in U.S. history, they were shoplifters. They would boost record albums under their clothing and walk out. They were punks from Kansas City, and now they were in their 50s and robbing banks for the last 15 years. So the short guy was Ray Bowman. We figured that out real quick. The police already were wondering where he got his money. Both of these men were living rather humble lives. They did not flash a lot of money. They each had a living girlfriend or a common law wife, as it were. And Ray's wife was Jenny Delamotte. She did not know what was going on. He just purchased everything with little bits of cash. And there was a room in their house that she was not allowed to go in. By the way, once we got the lucky break, I got some good help. My partner, Ron Bone, who's a great investigator and works white-collar criminal matters, got search warrants for every safe deposit box in America in the names of these guys. And that turned out to be 35 safe deposit boxes. And on one day, we searched across America all 35 of those boxes. Plus, we searched Ray Bowman's house in Kansas City. In his house, we found in that room disguised materials and so forth. I think $87,000 in cash and 85 guns that the guy owned. And again, his girlfriend, and there was clothing and disguised materials and so forth. So the case was shaping up. But a U.S. attorney, we had a good U.S. attorney named Arlen Storm here in town, and he was working this with us. And U.S. attorneys do not like surprises. When they go to trial, they want to know everything that's going to happen. They want to know what their people are going to testify. They want to know what the other folks are going to testify. And they want no surprises. And he wanted a lineup. So we held a lineup in the King County Jail. Now, usually when you have a lineup, you go to the jail and you pick out 5 other guys who look like your subject and ask them to stand in there, and they get cigarettes for doing it. When you're in your 50s and you're in jail, the other people who are 50 and in jail look wasted. These guys look like businessmen. So anyway, we brought the 2 bad guys here to King County. We brought 30 tellers from various previous banks that had been robbed from all over America. We had to keep them apart, and I had to find 5 tall guys and 5 short guys to stand in the lineup. This is what a lineup looks like. This was the tall guy lineup. And I got senior FBI agents, retired FBI agents, a police detective, and some guy from the federal lunchroom up there who worked for the IRS to stand in this lineup with Mr. Tall Guy, okay? And the lineups went fine. They went well. As you can imagine, over 15 years, people wouldn't remember everything. But of the tellers we brought, we got some good identifications. And from our 3 tellers, they all identified the short guy. They all picked the right short guy. One of them picked the right tall guy, and the others were no picks, which don't count against you. With that, we charged the short guy, Ray Bowman, with 6 counts of bank robbery and took him to trial. Oh, by the way, on the lineup, our U.S. attorney had never done lineups. It's more something that the locals do. He had never done one, so we went to the law books, like attorneys do, to read about lineup cases. And there was this one case where these two guys had been convicted based on a lineup, and they had appealed and kept saying they were innocent, and had appealed and kept saying they were innocent, but they were found guilty. That was Bolduc and Larkin. Remember the guys who were in prison for robbing these banks? And remember, after they were sent to prison, the bank robberies just continued. Anyway, so he read that case, but we held good lineups. In the Bolduc and Larkin case, they put both of them in the same lineup. We had a tall guy lineup and a short guy lineup with white males, same shaven, you know, and good lineups. So we charge him, and we're going to end up taking Ray Bowman, the short guy, to trial. There was a lot more that was going on in this. We went out and visited with tall guy in prison in Kansas and asked him if he wanted to cooperate and that the game was over. And he told us to go pound sand, you know. He's a punk bad guy, okay? We took Ray Bowman to trial. This was not like the O.J. Simpson trial. Our U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, Arlen Storm, and Kate Flaumer, who was the U.S. attorney in Seattle, handled this case. They put 108 government witnesses on the stand in 8 days. Then they took the 3 witnesses that the defense brought to speak of the high character of Ray Bowman and turned them around to be on our side. Does he have a job? No, you know. And so it was a great, and Ray Bowman was convicted. He would be sentenced to 24 years in federal prison. And 24 years in federal prison means 24 years you're going to be in prison, okay? With that, tall guy, William Kirkpatrick, pled guilty and got 16 years. He got off easier because he didn't push it to trial or something. What are they going to do when they get out of prison? Both of them thought it was a life sentence. Remember, they were in their 50s. Tall guy was 59 years old when he went to prison. But I figure he gets out this year. In all those safe deposit boxes we searched, we recovered $3.2 million and a lot of guns and stuff. Okay? They were used to getting a lot more money in robberies. We figured they got about $8 million total. So there's still a retirement fund out there somewhere for these guys. But I'll tell you what they're going to do when they get out. They're going to rob banks. Bad guys don't know any better. It's what they do. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if tall guy doesn't get himself into the business again. Okay, what about Bolduc and Larkin? When we discovered that they had been put in prison 8 years before and that the robberies just continued, I put a sign on the back of my office door that said, "Free the Milwaukee 2." Because it's really an erosion of the justice system and confidence in it if you put the wrong people in prison. Eventually, when tall guy pled guilty, they admitted that they had robbed those 4 banks in Wisconsin. And with that, these guys were released from prison. One of them, by the way, they'd been serious robbers, and one of them was a former murderer. They were bad guys. One of them passed away. I don't know what the story there, and the other one got $2 million from the government. So that's how that came out. But it's an unfortunate thing that we put the wrong guys in prison. The FBI is a great outfit. I work with good people, and they do excellent work. My last supervisor, well, I mentioned one supervisor here, Kevin Brock. Before that, Ellen Glasser was my supervisor here in Tacoma, the best supervisor I ever had. Today, she's the head of the FBI's, the former special agents of the FBI organization, big national organization. And the best special agent in charge I ever had was Bertie Passanelli, a female special agent in charge we had up in Seattle. So I worked with good people over the years. I did a lot of fun things. Usually when I talk to groups, I don't tell this story. It takes a little too long, a little complicated to tell. I tell about other little things we did and a lot of fun we had, and chasing bad guys and so forth. Now, do you have any questions? I'm sure I've forgotten something about this case. Yes?
Back to the bank robbery. How did they get into the bank if it was closed?
These guys had both taken courses on locksmith, okay, locksmithing. When a bank closes, until the last person leaves, you can't double lock it. The fire marshal won't leave, so it's locked. Now when you walk out of your bank, do you push one of those little paddle handles like I do at mine? Just push that little paddle handle and the door opens. These guys had a big coat hanger, a thick piece of steel with an L shape. Put it between the doors, turn sideways, pull, and you open the door. It didn't take a locksmith to do that, but that's how easy it is to walk into a bank. Now remember, you promised not to rob a bank. Their getaway car was a Jeep Cherokee stolen out of a Boeing parking lot up in Renton by keyed entry. They could steal any car by keyed entry because they had the locksmith car rings and were able to do that. We found that getaway car in Fred Meyer parking lot a week after our robbery, and it was clean like you wish your car was clean inside. Not a fingerprint anywhere, the owners or theirs or anything. And they had made a clean getaway and switched cars and so forth. What we learned afterwards was they took that money that night and drove their car down to Portland, stayed in a hotel near the airport, and counted money and divided it in two. And they took straps, all this money was strapped. They took the straps off and discarded those, and then went 2 different directions to return to their homes. Ray Bowman, short guy, went to Salt Lake City, opened the safe deposit box. The gal said, what's your address? He gave his Kansas City address. Well, you don't live here, why are you opening a safe deposit box? Well, I do business here. With that, he didn't put anything in that box. He was just a little too suspicious. He went across town, opened another one, put a bunch of money, $500,000 in there, and a silver gun that he pulled on the tellers. And then he went to Des Moines, Iowa, and another place, and then made it home, stashing money along the way, okay? The reason these guys got caught, the reason that lucky break happened was they were the best bank robbers in U.S. history, but they were not good at getting rid of the money. They didn't know how to launder money or really do much with it. So it was sitting in safe deposit boxes. And here's what happened. Myra Penny, the gal up in Minnesota, the girlfriend, wanted a home on the lake. So they bought a little piece of property up in Hovland on Lake Superior, way up there, and had a log cabin built, a beautiful home, for $187,000 at that time. And she paid for it $15,000 at a time, $10,000 at a time in cash, which was fine with the builder until he got done and they groused about something they didn't like that he had done. With that, he made an anonymous call to the IRS in Duluth, Minnesota. Special Agent Billy Waters of the IRS went out to the Hovland log cabin and laid some paper on Myra Penny saying, we'd like to know where you got that money, especially since neither she or her boyfriend had filed any income tax returns for the last number of years. Laid the paper on. Well, Billy Kirkpatrick was there, and he went into a panic after that, went down, cleared out money out of safe deposit boxes in Minneapolis, drove to Las Vegas and stashed it in a rental space, where you put furniture, one of these rental places, and where they had disguises and everything, and a lot of their equipment for their crimes. He put it there, but he didn't like that much money being left there. So after a few months and no word from the IRS, he rented a big safe deposit box in somebody else's name in Minneapolis, flew to Las Vegas, rented a car, filled it full of stuff, and was driving back across Nebraska when he got popped. Okay? So that was our lucky break, but it was brought about by the IRS. Billy Waters, good agent there, and we worked with them. That was all part of this case. Other questions? Yes?
And does the bank, in some cases, used to put something on the bills so that when they walked out, it would...
Okay, yeah. Traditionally, they had dye packs that would explode, and the robber would be covered with orange dye or something. But the banks have gotten better than that now. The bad guys all know this, so I guess I can tell you that they have little transmitter packs that are very thin, and they'll put that in what they call bait money. When the teller is robbed, she grabs the money out of her case, including that, hands it to the guy. When he goes out the door, the bait money, that little transmitter is activated, and it starts sending a signal. Beep, beep, beep. Police cars in Tacoma and some major cities have receivers for that, and there are towers around that retransmit it. When they hear a beep, 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 and they have a bank robbery call, they start responding, going to where the beep is louder and stronger until they close in on the guys. Well, the gang guys know this. They used to throw the money into buckets of water. I mean, they'd find that little transmitter and throw it in a bucket of water. It still transmits, by the way. But the smarter thing was just throw it out the window, and so they would get away. I told you these guys are the best bank robbers in U.S. history. One thing we learned when we searched Ray Bowman's house in Kansas City, we found a receipt for something he bought at a radio shop in Fife. I went to that radio shop and said, "What is this?" And he said, "Oh, it's an ambiance reader. I can't remember the name of it, but it reads radio ambiance. If I'm in my police car and I mash that and make a call, it sends a little signal, and the needle on this thing will jump when I mash that." They had bought an instrument that will read beep, 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 so that they could wand the music, the money, and find where that transmitter was. I haven't heard of anybody being that smart besides these guys. It's
which Radio Shack was it?
So these guys were good. Other questions? Yes?
I'm kind of paranoid about cyber crime. We hear it all the time. Does the local office in Tacoma get involved in helping fight this kind of thing? And it seems like it's more and more pervasive with one institution after another being affected by
cyber crimes. I'll tell you what, I've been retired for a good number of years. I don't keep up on what they're doing now, but I know there is a whole unit at Washington, D.C., an off-site unit that is working in counterterrorism that includes a lot of cyber stuff, okay? Again, I'm not smart enough to comment on it, or knowledgeable enough to comment on it. But I will say this. Remember after 9/11, we passed the Patriot Act because the complaint was that the government hadn't connected the dots to identify, these guys ahead of time and prevent that. So we created the Patriot Act so there'd be more dots to connect, okay? And it didn't take very few months before there was a liberal outcry that this could violate our rights because, and we've heard it since then, about NSA listening to whatever or gathering data. Thank heavens for those guys that are doing that. I've worked with people like that. I trust them to be responsible. There are judicial restraints in place and so forth. So, but cybercrime and victimization, I'm not real good at it. Identity theft, I can't say too much. I do speak to senior groups about common frauds that are happening. And I'll just mention one to you, the grandparent fraud that's happening all around us here. My wife got one of those calls. Somebody says, "Grandma, I'm in trouble. Oh, this is your favorite grandson?" And my wife says, "Is this Michael?" We have this 21-year-old grandson. "Yeah, I came to California to attend a funeral of my friend, and And while I was here, I had a crash. My rental car broke my nose. That's why I sound funny. Then he puts on the legal aid guy who explains that you need bail money and you should go to Safeway and wire money immediately to pay the bail. Okay, this is the grandparent fraud. Don't be sucked in by that. And it's happening a whole lot. They just make, if your name is in the phone book, you're a senior citizen, okay? Because all the young people have cell phones. So they're going to call you grandma or grandpa if you answer, okay? So watch out for that fraud. Yes?
I'm curious about the second best bank robber. The second best bank robber.
Who cares?
Snap.
Who's the second best?
Yeah.
You want to try for it? No.
I just
No, I don't know. We've had a lot sexier bank robberies. The Hollywood bank robber up in Seattle, remember? That was a lot sexier. I got in on the end of that one. But
Disguises. Did these guys use a consistent disguise, or did they change their costumes all the
there
time?
was a couple of robberies where they wore Nixon masks and things like that, where they actually wore masks. But they had gotten to a point where they just wore sunglasses and the cap and weren't too worried about disguise. They had the disguise materials, but they didn't feel they needed that anymore. Other questions? Okay, well, let me just say, I'm wrapping up. Time's up. Thank you for letting me come. Thank you to Rotary. I've eaten ice cream sundaes for 21 years out there. Appreciate you guys. It's been great for supporting the Courage Classic. And it's a pleasure to meet with you and be able to share this. Thanks, Bruce.